Hi guys, welcome to another true crime story time, where I tell you one true crime case that was solved using forensic science, all while doing, that's right, my makeup. So if that's something you're into, then you are more than welcome to stick around and hit the subscribe button. Also, quick reminder, the comment section is a privilege. Don't fuck it up. Now let's get into today's case. But before we do, we have a sponsor today. Caseify! Caseify is one of the world's most popular tech accessory brands that have gained a lot of notoriety over the years for their super protective iPhone cases and global collaborations with different artists. Caseify specializes in ultra protective, trendy cell phone cases that aren't bulky. Because let's be real, ain't nobody got time to lug around no brick. Okay, we already lugging a purse. You think we want to lug around a brick? We don't. Now with 20% more protection. Their phone cases are 4 times the military standard. Their phone cases have been drop tested 104 times. It is said to withstand an 8.2 foot drop. I mean, wow, I feel like you could take this to World War II and this thing would probably last. No, we can't go back in time. Choose from an array of prints and designs. You can choose from various artists that are part of their artist collab program. They have over 2,000 designs available, or you can customize your own design like I'm doing here. With the holiday seasons right around the corner, this is perfect for a Christmas gift or a stocking stuffer. Caseify has worked with over 300 different artists to develop a culturally diverse community, which I think is an awesome program because it allows people to express themselves authentically. Caseify is always looking for new ways to improve phone cases, as well as the community and the environment. With Recaseify, they have recycled up to 51,000 phone cases. Wow. That's a lot of cases. 65% of their cases are recycled. That's 20% less carbon emission. So buying their cell phone cases, you're not just doing good for you, but you're also doing good for the community as well as the environment. You're just doing good all around. You elevating. Caseify also has an array of cute yet functional accessories for your phone cases, from phone charms to phone straps. My favorite accessory from them is the snake chain. Girl, I cannot tell you the compliments I got on this snake chain. Sometimes I just need to take my cell phone. I don't need the other things, and I love having that strap available. Who knew that fashion and functionality could come together like this? Caseify's iPhone 14 Impact series is now available at caseify.com. Go to caseify.com/mysterymuse today to get 15% off your order. That's caseify.com/mysterymuse for 15% off. Thank you again to Caseify for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you guys for making this possible yet again. I'm so appreciative and I love you guys so much. Now let's get into today's case. Today's video will be featuring the Troublemaker palette and some other stuff from Colourpop. This all takes place in 1995 in Modesto, California, where Kathy Mauser and her family lived. Now, Kathy, she had been married twice. This was her second marriage, and she was living with her new husband and her kids. Kathy had a 14-year-old daughter named Genna. Kathy's 14-year-old daughter, Genna, had recently been acting up at school and at home, and they didn't really know what was going on with her, so Kathy took her to therapy. You know, Genna was 14. She was at that age where she was starting to develop her own thoughts and ideas and just her own mindset, and so she was being a little defiant. Okay, Genna was being a brat, all right guys? Genna was a brat. And so Kathy had no choice but to take away her phone privileges and ground her. She was just acting up at school, she was acting out at home, she was talking back, she was being disobedient. I don't know what's going on outside. Now we got weed whackers. Listen, you guys gonna have to just get through the weed whackers, okay? Just get over it, because I can't stop. So on Saturday, October 14th, 1995, I'm looking for my concealer, here it is. So on Saturday, October 14th, 1995, before heading out to work, Kathy just stopped in to her daughter's room to remind her that, you know, she was on punishment and she was not to use the phone or to go out at all that weekend. And what did you guys think happened? Kathy arrived home around 1 p.m. and she noticed that the door was locked, which was unusual for her family because when someone was home, they would never lock the doors. They would only lock the doors if everyone was going to be out of the house. They normally didn't lock their doors. And guys, it was 1995. It was a different time. I remember back then we didn't lock the doors. No, actually, no, we always locked the doors. That's a damn lie. But I mean, I don't know what neighborhood they lived in. This was very unusual for their family because someone was always usually home, and Genna's ass was supposed to be home. When Kathy entered the home, there was no sign of Genna. So initially, Kathy was very upset because she was thinking that Genna just blatantly ignored her warning to not go out, and she just left the house. Like, she just blatantly disobeyed her mother. Back in the days, we would leave notes. We would leave notes on our fridge. We would leave notes on the countertops, you know, sticky notes, to let people know where we were going because we didn't have cell phones. Like, it wasn't relatively easy to get a cell phone. They were very expensive. You know, not everybody had them like they do now. After she didn't find a note, then she became concerned. Worried, she checked at her neighbors to see if Genna could possibly be there, but she wasn't. Genna was nowhere to be found in the neighborhood. And as soon as Kathy's husband and her son got home, they also joined Kathy in the search for Genna, but once again, they came up with nothing. It seemed as though Genna had just disappeared into thin air. And as we know, that's not possible. Okay, not for a whole ass body, a whole ass person to just disappear into thin air. After several hours of searching without any success, Kathy reported her daughter missing. I thought that we could do the weed whacker and we could get past it, but like, no, we can't. No, sir, I can't. It's just like so distracting, and you know, I'm trying to relax, put on my makeup, talk to you guys, and I have Mr. Weed Whacker over here. God help us. Within a few hours, Kathy was contacted by law enforcement officials, and they informed Kathy that they had found the body of a young girl matching Genna's description 20 miles outside of Modesto, California. Now, what was she doing all the way out there? She didn't get out there by herself. Come on now. She's 14, so she ain't driving. So she walked? I don't think so. Law enforcement officials had Kathy and her husband come down to the morgue to identify the body. And sure enough, the body was in fact Genna's. Kathy was absolutely devastated and she broke down. The body had not been in good condition when it was found. It was obvious that this was in fact a homicide, that Genna had been murdered. Definitely there was signs of foul play. Relatives and friends found it difficult to come to terms with Genna's death. I mean, at least the manner of her death, because they felt like if it had been an accident, it would have been easier for them to take. But because it was a murder, they couldn't wrap their minds around it. You know, how this could happen to someone that they knew, a 14-year-old girl nonetheless. They really couldn't fathom it. Autopsy report revealed that Genna had suffered a brutal assault. She had suffered several different blows to the head, one in which was to her forehead and the other to her temple. Medical examiners did perform a kit on Genna, but they found that she hadn't been assaulted, which thank God. I mean, it's not getting any worse, at least. Oh, well, you can't really get any worse because she's already dead, but yeah, okay. It's bad. It's just bad all the way around, guys. I love looking like the Cowardly Lion. During the autopsy, medical examiners found something very bizarre. And although Genna's body had been discovered without any shoes on her feet, her bare feet were clean. There was no dust, dirt, or debris. So where was her shoes? Where was her socks? Like, how does she get to where she was without getting any dirt on her feet? This led forensic scientists to believe that Genna had been transported from another location to this location. So that was not the original location that Genna had been murdered. Somebody had obviously transported her body there. Another odd thing medical examiners found during Genna's autopsy report was some strange markings on the inside of Genna's thighs. The marks on Genna's thighs were pressure indentations that would normally disappear on a person that was alive. In fact, it would fade very quickly on a living person. But these indentations were still there, which meant that Genna had to have gotten these marks post-mortem. Because you see, gravity causes the blood to exit the vessels on a deceased body, highlighting the post-mortem pressure marks which were found on Genna's body. Normally, these sort of markings and indentations will remain on a body until the body starts to decompose. So this is how they figured out that these marks were caused to Genna after she had already been deceased. It was clear that this was a homicide and that someone had done this to Genna, so police needed to start looking for clues to who their suspect was. They needed to find out who the murderer was. So investigators began their investigation with the family. Of course, we know they always want to start with the people closest to the victim. The first thing investigators wanted to do was to check the Muze family's phone records. They wanted to see if Genna had been speaking with anyone suspicious or somebody who could have caused harm to Genna. But who would want to harm Genna? A 14-year-old girl. Now, despite Genna being on punishment and not being allowed to use the phone, investigators found that Genna had, of course, like a typical teenager, she did use the phone. Genna had made several different calls to friends. She was not giving no mind, paying no attention to what her parents had told her. Now, one of Genna's friends came forward and reported that during a phone conversation with her around 11 a.m. that day, that Genna just abruptly stopped right in the middle of their conversation. That's really weird. That's scary. It was a landline, so when she just stopped speaking, the phone kind of went to the dial tone and that was it. Assuming that there was some sort of disconnection, her friend just waited, assuming that Genna would call back, but she never did. Now, it was 1995, so cell phones were not as common as they are now. Everybody now, we all got cell phones, 5-year-olds got cell phones now. It's crazy. When you were unable to get in contact with someone over a landline, you would use something called a beeper. I don't know if any of you guys remember this. I remember when she couldn't get in contact with Genna, she decided to page her. We used to call it beepers. They were also called pagers, but I used to call it a beeper. I don't know. Comment down below what you used to call it, if you used to call it a pager or a beeper. Genna's friends paged her numerous times that day without a response. Now that I'm thinking about it, if you put a landline and a pager together, that's pretty much a cell phone today. Yeah. So basically, that was the evolution of cell phones. Detectives did a search of the Muze family home. They searched Genna's bedroom and they found a diary. Now, in Genna's diary, there was an entry that had recently been written by Genna. The entry was actually on the day that she had died. It seemed as though Genna was interested in 2 boys. Among the 2 boys that Genna was interested in, one of them was an older guy, and he really shouldn't have been talking to her at all, but he was, This guy was kind of a weirdo. He would pry on girls younger than him, like way younger than him. And Genna had met him at an amusement park. According to Genna's friends, she was really, really into this guy. There was something about this guy that she really liked about him. I mean, she was 14, so she probably liked every guy, to be honest with you. Like, any guy that shows a 14-year-old girl attention, they're gonna like, trust me. And this guy was kind of a bit of a creep, He was prying on girls a lot younger than him. Oh, wow, that's crooked. One of Genna's friends approached Kathy and told her that she recalled a conversation that her and Genna had regarding her funeral. I don't know why young 14-year-olds would be talking about that, but she was talking about that with her friends, and Genna told her friend that she did not want people to be sad and depressed at her funeral. She actually wanted people to be laughing and happy. And yeah, she didn't want, this sad funeral. Kathy decided that instead of going with a traditional funeral, that she would do something more along the lines to honor Genna's wishes. And she had Genna's friends help her plan. It was a beautiful service. I mean, everyone obviously was very sad about their loss. And among the people who were very, very upset about the loss of Genna was her stepfather, Doug. Now, Genna and Doug, they were very close ever since Genna was a young toddler. That is when Doug, her stepfather, had came into her life. And so they were pretty close. I mean, she grew up most of her life up into that point with Doug as her father. I don't know what's going on with my brows, and I am like afraid to address them. You know, I mean, Doug really treated Genna like she was his biological daughter. And during the funeral service, you could see how distressed Doug was about his loss. Like, he was pretty upset. Genna and Doug appear to have a very loving relationship, and he was a very active part of her life. At this point, investigators had no real suspects. Now, one thing that the investigators found rather peculiar was that during their search of the Mauser family home, they didn't find any signs of forced entry. I mean, the door was locked, and they didn't find any signs of a struggle, as though like someone had come in and attacked her or anything like that, which again led them to believe that Genna most likely left the family home. But where did she go, and who did she go with? That was the question they were trying to figure out. Detectives theorized that Genna was not forced from the home, as there was no signs of her leaving unwillingly. They were starting to think that Genna just rode off with one of the boys she had mentioned in her diary. However, both boys had alibis and were cleared as suspects. After the two boys were cleared, detectives took a second look at Genna's family members. First, they checked into Genna's older brother, and they found that he did have an alibi, and the neighbors corroborated that he was there with his alibi at the time of Genna's murder. I guess he was with some neighbors. In addition to that, they checked into Genna's mom, Kathy, and they found that she was actually at an aerobics class, so she also could not have been the killer, and she was cleared as well. Next, they questioned Genna's stepfather, Doug. He told investigators that he worked in the lab for a few hours. However, investigators could not corroborate that story, because when they went back to check the security camera footage in the lab, ironically, they were shut off on the day of Genna's murder. Dougie, what are you doing? What you been up to? Because you ain't telling the truth. So investigators was looking at Doug a little sideways. They needed to verify Doug's alibi, that he was in fact at work in the lab at the time he said he was. When they asked the security guard if he remembered seeing Doug come into work on that day, October 14th, he said that he didn't remember seeing him. Investigators were unable to verify Doug's alibi. So then Doug gives police a second alibi, okay? In Doug's second version of his story, he claims to have gone to a fast food restaurant where he had lunch. But when detectives checked the cameras there, they weren't working. I mean, my God. This guy either has like the worst luck or the best luck, because the cameras ain't catching his ass. And investigators found out on the day of Genna's murder that Doug was the last one to leave the house. He said that when he left, Genna was in her room cleaning it. Investigators could not clear Genna's stepfather, Doug, because they didn't have the video footage to verify that he was where he said he was, and they didn't have any witnesses to corroborate his story. Something was up, and it wasn't really looking good for Doug. I can tell you that. Doug's vehicle was searched, but there was no evidence of foul play found in his vehicle. So police were thinking perhaps maybe he cleaned the vehicle, but there was also no signs that the vehicle had recently been cleaned either. I mean, whatever happened, it probably didn't happen in Doug's car. However, while searching Doug's vehicle, investigators did find one compelling clue. Stuck in the car's undercarriage was some kind of dried plant. Some of the pieces were very large. To analyze the plant material, detectives collected the pieces and sent them off to the forensics lab for testing. They had to bring in a forensic scientist that specialized in plants, so they brought in a forensic botanist. The forensic botanist examined the materials found at the crime scene. However, he also found yellow star thistle, which is a weed that comes in considerable quantities, so it is, very well known to the California area. The forensic botanist considered this significant because yellow star thistle was also found on Genna's body during the autopsy report. The yellow star thistle found on Doug's car has some traits that set it apart from others. Genna's body and the crime scene contain the same yellow star thistle as the one found on Doug's car. Now, the plant evidence was compelling, but it wasn't enough to convict Doug. It would be impossible to prove that the yellow star thistle found on Doug's car was the same yellow star thistle found on Genna's body and at the crime scene, because star thistle is very common in Southern California. It's everywhere. Detectives knew they were on the right track, but they needed more. They needed some solid evidence. So they decided to focus on Genna's post-mortem marks. According to the medical examiner who performed Genna's autopsy, the markings were manufactured rather than natural. One detective thought he found what made the marks on Genna's thigh in Doug Mauser's car. Now it's time to go into the palette. But anyway, back to the story. He sent photos of Genna's thighs to a photogrammetry specialist. I hope I said that right, photogrammetry. It was unclear what caused the indentations on Genna's thighs, so detectives asked this specialist to come in and help them. The photogrammetry specialist zoomed in on Genna's thighs to find out what the actual size of the markings were. The specialist wanted to get an accurate size of the markings. The photogrammetry specialist found that the markings on Genna's thighs were consistent with the top part of a seatbelt buckle. Dougie boy, you're in trouble. So the photogrammetry specialist traveled to Modesto, California to study the seatbelt buckle in Doug Mauser's vehicle. In order to find out what happened that day, the specialist wanted to recreate the crime scene. So he placed a model the same size and weight as Genna in the back seat of Doug Mauser's vehicle. Here we go, we're about to get him, we're about to get him. He put the model in the same position as Genna's body would have been placed. They speculated that it would have taken Doug about 15 minutes to drive Genna's body to the crime scene. And what do you know? The marks on the model's legs were identical to the marks from Genna's autopsy photos. Based on these results, investigators could now place Genna's body in the back seat of Doug Mauser's car. Wow, her own stepfather. Based on the forensic evidence, investigators were finally able to get a warrant and they arrested Doug and charged him with Genna's murder. Now, despite the prosecution's belief that Doug had in fact killed Genna, they couldn't figure out what his motive was. They didn't understand why he had done it. Now, they did know that Genna was a very combative teenager who would oftentimes talk back to her parents. Genna had violated her mother's rules. She had been talking on the phone to her friends that morning when she wasn't supposed to. So perhaps Doug caught her talking on the phone, confronted Genna, and maybe they got into an argument. She started talking back and he lost it, So they believe that he was most likely tired of Genna's disobedience and her poor behavior, and in a fit of rage, he hit her over the head and he couldn't stop himself and he ended up strangling her, I guess. I don't know though, that's still a lot. Why do I feel like there's more to this story? I don't know, it couldn't have just been that she was a disobedient teenager who's talked back and that is the reason why he strangled her. There's one thing to smack her upside the back of her head and it be an accident, well, it not be an accident, but maybe he hit her too hard and she passed out. That's one thing. But I mean, strangling her, that's a whole other thing. That's why I'm so confused with this case. I'm just thinking like, there has to be more. Basically, they were trying to say that in a panic, he strangled her because he didn't want to deal with child abuse allegations. So you'd rather deal with murder allegations? I don't know. Something about it just makes me feel like there was so much more. Like maybe something was going on extra, you know what I mean, between him and Genna. And perhaps he didn't want that to come out. But I don't want to accuse people of things. I mean, this is just my own personal theories. The prosecutors believe that he removed Genna's clothes to conceal evidence. They don't think it had anything to do with, you know, anything sexual, because they didn't find anything like that on her. They think that he was just trying to conceal whatever little evidence that there was left behind. But Doug inadvertently placed the seatbelt buckle underneath Genna's leg, causing the impressions. He picked up the yellow star thistle pieces on his car when he dumped Genna's body in the wooded area. As far as the cameras go with the alibis, prosecutors believe that Doug just got lucky with the cameras. Now, during his interrogation, Doug did admit to using the computer in his office on that Saturday, but when investigators looked into it, they could find no solid evidence that he actually had used the computer or was even there. So he was still, in my opinion, he was still just lying and running around. Thanks to forensic science and some good police work, Doug Mauser was convicted of second-degree murder and he was sentenced to 15 years to life. Doug did file an appeal with the court, and in 2004 his appeal was denied. Genna's biological father and stepmother appeared at Doug's hearing in 2011, and they urged the court to not let him out. They did not want this guy back out on the streets. Due to Doug's refusal to accept responsibility for his crime, Doug's parole was denied again in 2014. I mean, he just will not accept responsibility. Now, Kathy, she believed in her husband's innocence. She fully supported him, and she moved closer to the prison where he was staying, or where he was locked up. Really, girl? I mean, you can't find somebody else to date? I don't get it. Like, I really don't understand this. We've seen it before. I think there was something more going on, and Genna maybe threatened to tell or say something about it, and this is the reason why he strangled her, because I mean, something missing here, I feel like. And definitely he should not get out of prison. I don't know, or should I put on a dark one? What do you guys think? I don't know, I feel like dark is a little bit much. Several years later, prosecutors that convicted Doug Mauser would also get their first guilty verdict on the Scott Peterson case. That's right, the same prosecutors that worked on the Doug Mauser case also prosecuted Scott Peterson. Now, Scott Peterson was accused of murdering his wife, Lacey, and his unborn child. If you don't know the story, you can go ahead and look it up. It's a pretty famous case. Very well known, so it should be easy to find. But yeah, this was the same prosecution. Also, although it was not revealed in the original episode, the prosecution did play a pretty incriminating tape of Kathy, Genna's mom, and Kathy's older brother having a very incriminating conversation. On the recording, Genna's brother is heard asking his mother if Doug did kill her, and Kathy responded, "Well, you know how Genna was." I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but it doesn't matter how she was. She didn't deserve to die. So for an attitude problem, I don't care if she had an attitude problem or not. She didn't deserve to be murdered by her stepfather. Like, that's, I mean, I don't know what people be thinking. Guys, why? Like, what? I don't know why. I just have that feeling, like a gut feeling that something else was happening. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think something more was happening, or do you think it was just she had an attitude? I don't know. Also, on the day that Genna died, Doug told neighbors that he had fought with his stepdaughter over doing her chores. I really don't know, you guys, what was going on in that house and what's wrong with her mama, because her mama is not right. Her mama is not right. Doug's current residence is a medium security prison in Chowchilla, California. I can barely say that. Why do I want to say Chinchilla, California? Oh my God, what do you guys think about this case and my makeup look? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like these, you can check out some of my other videos. I'll leave them linked on the screen right here or right here. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Please share because it really helps me out. And I'll see you guys next time with another true crime story time. Bye.